Gwyneth Paltrow, CEO and founder of Goop, and Kristin Lemkau, Chief Marketing Officer at JPMorgan Chase.
I do my head talk, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? Head talk, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling?
Oh, she came off.
Baby, how you feeling?
All right, one more time. Can I get a big Women on the Move welcome for Gwyneth Paltrow? Thank you. Good afternoon. So she doesn't need a big intro, but I'm going to just try. So she's, as everybody probably knows, Oscar winner, best-selling author, mother of 2 teenagers, recently just got married. And more than a decade ago, when she was at the peak of her career, she took a turn and potentially accidentally started her own company, which is now Goop, a full lifestyle brand that the New York Times has estimated is worth $250 million. And by the way, she can also cook and sing. She founded Goop from her kitchen table back in 2008, and it started out as an email that became a newsletter. And it's now a lifestyle brand that's an e-commerce brand. It has physical retail stores. It has a wellness summit. And now you have your own proprietary products around skincare, self-care, fragrance, clothing, just about everything. And having gotten to know you a little bit, you're also sort of surprisingly normal and fun. But I want to, I guess, go back a bit to the beginning with Goop, where you were kind of just putting out an email. And a lot of it, I think, was from research that you'd done when you were on films and you'd asked the crew where they like to go shop or eat. Did you have any idea that this was going to be a thing?
Not really.
But kinda.
I mean, you know, to be totally honest, I was sort of having an early midlife crisis, and I had this career that was amazing and was taking me all over the world, and I think looked from the outside super desirable. And I had a little bit of a crisis because I felt like I'm not really doing what I want to be doing. And so it took quite a lot of, I mean, I was so trepidatious about even saying out loud, like I would love to somehow do something in the internet space. And you know, my passions really were food and travel and wellness and discovering cool shit and connecting people to interesting things. And I curse sometimes and it happens without me realizing it, so I apologize in advance.
You're forgiven.
It might happen again. And I thought, my God, I have no authority to do this. I didn't go to business school, so I just started very, very gently with a little bit of content. But yeah, I definitely secretly harbored this hope that I could someday create a business.
And at what point did you know it was really a thing, that this wasn't just a hobby, this was going to become a real company with real investors, and ultimately what it became?
I think that we started to get feedback from businesses that we were talking about on Goop, that like really quantifiable feedback that we were amplifying their businesses. And you know, like there's this one small female-founded business that, you know, she was like, I did my whole quarter in one day after I was on Goop. And so I thought, my gosh, you know, there's something here. I think it's potentially bigger than what I'm expecting, but how will I go about monetizing it? And it was like the days of the flash sale and the shoe subscription box, and I didn't necessarily want to build a media business, so it took me a long time to think my way through it and to sort of even give myself permission to think my way through it.
What's interesting, we've talked a lot today about the need to empower yourselves, empower each other, and what's interesting is Goop was really ahead of the curve around self-care and women realizing it was time to take care of ourselves and not just take care of everybody else. And you were really at the forefront of that, and now mindfulness and organic eating and all of these things are sort of mainstream. But
Yeah.
Did you do this intentionally? Did you know you were ahead of the curve, or how did you sort of get this insight that self-care was going to become a thing?
I just felt a need for it myself. I saw it in my friends. I saw, you know, this incredible over-responsibility that women felt. And I also thought it was really interesting kind of sociologically what was happening. It was like we were coming into a time as women where we were kind of delicately starting to give ourselves permission to be more than one thing. And we were saying like, no, we can be really intelligent and have careers and be maternal and be sexual and be fun. Like, we don't have to be one archetype that, you know, the culture up until this point has cast us in. And I think that's beautiful, but at the same time, I do think we felt like, okay, how are we going to be all these things? And we have to be all these things to all these people. And I felt like what I was seeing was from this over-responsibility. It was like, on the one hand, a kind of freedom, and on the other hand, a total exhaustion. And also that particularly women weren't being met with the kind of attention or specificity around their health when they were going, you know, when they were seeking their regular MDs. And so people were like, well, if I try yoga, might I feel better? Or, you know, if I try, you know, speaking really straight to my husband about what I need, like, will I feel better? Or, you know, if I try walking to work, it was like people were, I could feel, even for myself, you know, I could feel that women were ready to have autonomy over their lives. And
do you feel like they needed permission to?
I mean, I think that one of the things I feel proud about Goop, you know, and where we've come is that we started having these more difficult conversations, and what that did was sometimes it was shocking, but what we were able to do was really start to help people eliminate shame around asking the questions. And I think that that's something that we're very committed to. You know, we're committed to having a place where we can talk about things that might be difficult to think about or you know, even hear about.
Talk a little bit about your business model, because it's an interesting mix of e-commerce, both recommended products and your own products, content, and a lot of people have struggled making content a real business model.
Yeah.
And when a lot of people are getting out of retail or closing retail stores, you're opening them. But you've got an interesting mix of pop-up and permanent stores and experiences. And is this kind of the new way to build a lifestyle brand? And did you fumble your way into it, or you just sort of instinctively knew what your readers would want?
I pretty much like fumbled my way into it. And it was very organic how it all kind of unfolded. We started, the first business model was partnerships, very gently, and you know, we always had strong values around aligning with partners that we felt true alignment with. And then a little bit of e-commerce, multi-brand collaborations, then our own, and then the retail. And I do think it's important these days to have a really omni-channel way to touch consumers and to bring meaning into their lives and really bring something to their lives. I think, you know, the days of kind of opening a retail store and expecting people to come in might be waning, but if you're trying to bring something, if you're trying to add value to their lives through those experiences or help them complete the loop of what it is, of the digital experience in real life, I think it's meaningful to people, especially if they really connect with you and your values and what you're trying to say. So for us, it's worked pretty well so far.
And how do you decide your partners? Because we did a partnership with you, the Sapphire card, that was super successful, where we did a Valentine's Day partnership and we targeted it to men. If you want a dummy-proof Valentine's Day, you should follow the Goop guide. But it was a wholly collaborative experience. How do you decide which brands are on brand or off brand, and do you reject people, which is unusual in a time where people are interested in advertising?
Yeah, we actually do reject a lot of partners because, you know, it's really hard to build a brand and it's really easy to wreck it. And I think, you know, our reader and consumer has really high standards, and they, you know, I think that resonance with our values is what makes them keep coming back to the brand. And so we look for brands who are trying to do something good in the world in one way or another, or
including help men figure out Valentine's Day.
Well, that's very important.
It is. So we've talked a lot about sisterhood, and you and I have talked about this before. When people were coming up in the business, I know when I was coming up in this business, that wasn't a thing like it is today. And have you experienced that? Are there women who helped you out, and how? And who are the women that you're helping out?
Yeah. You know, it's funny, when I was starting, it was like I reached out to kind of aggregate a group of mentors, and it was a little bit disheartening that when I realized all of the people that I wanted to talk to who are expertise either in, you know, e-commerce or performance marketing, you know, who had founded businesses that were scaling quickly and doing something, you know, really disruptive, were all men. Which is great. We love men, and men are great. But I felt like, where is the, like, who can I call, you know, who's a woman who can, so, you know, I had some women in my life that I did call, of course, but the people that I was getting like the most hardcore advice from were men. And so that's why I think when I got to a certain point, you know, I really kind of opened up my phone lines to women who are starting e-commerce businesses or contextual commerce businesses. And, you know, I speak to a lot of women now, and I'm like, I just want them to learn from my mistakes. I made so many mistakes. You know, when I look back, I cringe at what it cost me in terms of time and money, and I would love for other women to be able to avoid those things. I think it's super important. Women, you know, we're so smart and we care so much, and, you know, when we come together to help each other, I think, like, we are exponentially more successful.
I'm giving a cheers to that.
Thank It's true, though.
So we have a number of our clients, actually, who joined us, many of whom are female founders. Is there one of those mistakes or pieces of advice that you've passed on to the women who you mentor now that you could share?
You know, I would say maybe two things. I would say, first of all, do not be afraid to ask questions and to appear ignorant. Like when I started, I had so much shame around not knowing certain things. And I would be in meetings and I would be like Googling, like, what is a SaaS business, you know, under the table? Or like, what is the difference between AOV and AUR? And like, what? Oh yeah, you know. And then I was like, you know what? This is ridiculous. Like, I don't know the answers. I can't be expected to know the answers. I'm a first-time founder. And I think when I gave myself permission to feel kind of vulnerable and work through that initial embarrassment, I ended up learning so quickly. And I think I also garnered respect from people who were like, wow, you're not afraid to ask questions. Like, there's all this weird feeling around us asking questions. And I made the decision to dispel that. And so I think that's really key. And I also think sometimes as women, we're like, oh, this guy's gonna think I'm an idiot if I don't know this, you know? So I think that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing is to just be ruthlessly true to yourself and your word. Mm-hmm. Because we've all been taught, you know, maybe not some of the millennial women and the Gen Z women like my daughter, who certainly speaks her mind.
Yeah, mine too.
But I think our generation of women, you know, we were taught to be nice and smooth things over and sublimate our feelings around when we thought something didn't feel right. And I just think it's critical to be true to yourself and to say it, you know, and you can speak really straight in a way that is kind and not charged and not going to piss somebody off, and you know, but I think it's critical, especially when you're trying to create something and put something into the world. And I think it's a new way of, you know, women operating in business, and that's what I try to embody every day.
As far as women have come, still only 2% of venture capital funding goes to female-founded firms.
Yep.
And I've talked to a number of female founders, and they have horror stories from just outright harassment to just more the micro inequity of having to explain for 15 minutes why a woman would want to rent a dress or some other type of business model that these guys couldn't understand. Did you have those same experiences as other female founders when you went out to raise, or was it different because you were Gwyneth Paltrow, or harder or easier? And what's the way out of this?
Yeah,
We're
I mean,
standing
can you
still.
imagine me going into a room and explaining why a woman might need a yoni egg? I'm kidding, I never did that. Yeah, I think that
The closed caption can't figure out what you were saying. They censored you.
that might be better for all of us. No, I think that it was really hard for me to raise money in the beginning, not from women. You know, I raised like a seed round fairly easily because people loved Goop and they saw it and they believed in what I was doing. It's this amazing group of women who gave me my seed funding. And then, you know, in the Series A, it was really, I think a lot of people took the meeting because I was Gwyneth Paltrow, but then they would sort of be like, oh, I love the Royal Tenenbaums, and can I have a selfie for my wife? And then they'd be like, yeah, we're not going to give you any money. So I think at a certain point, you know, when your unit economics are great and you're, you know, doing much better, it's easier. But I think that I see it changing, but I also worry that, you know, certain VCs or certain private equity firms are sort of doing it because it's the right thing to do, which sort of bothers me. But in the same way, I'm like, well, if that means that women are getting VC funding, then that's great. But I think I think we're on the cusp of seeing the change. I think the more that we can create businesses that are successful and we can move the needle, the more the funding will be there. But there is more resistance than I expected.
Yeah. So one of my favorite quotes from you, my life is good because I am not passive about it. Mm-hmm. And we've talked a lot about the need to sort of write your own story and create your own change. What do you do to maintain an active or not passive life?
Yeah.
What advice would you have for people?
I mean, I think that for me, it's been critical to be very active around trying to become a better person and optimize all aspects of my life. I really feel like we're here one time, and you know, it's my responsibility to be the best mother I can, you know, not pass on like transgenerational trauma by not addressing it or talking about it, you know, by just sort of not being conscious about how to be a good leader, you know, to take the best care of my body as I can. And that's my choice, and I don't judge anybody for not doing that, but I feel like when I say my life is good, it doesn't mean that I don't suffer and I haven't had heartbreak and loss and that I don't have incredible challenge all the time. But I think at a certain point I learned that how you relate to what's in front of you is the issue. There's no issue, it's how you're relating to it, and that we all have the power to relate to something in a way where we can actively change it and transmute it, and it can become a lesson or it can become a learning opportunity. And so, you know, it's probably like due to my personal damage, but I just try really hard. I don't know.
Well, I find so much of it is a function of how you spend your time. Like how you spend your time becomes your output, and that's really hard to become disciplined about when you're trying to stay in shape and do a job and be a mother. And
Yeah.
how do you have the same struggles as everyone else, or do you have
of
a
course.
system for being intentional with your time?
I try to be really intentional with my time. I wouldn't say that I have a system because life throws so many monkey wrenches in all the time, but I do try to be very structured about my day, you know? I get up early, I have reading time in the morning, then I have breakfast time, I take my kids to school, I go to the gym for an hour, I go to the office. And then, you know, I think one of the things that I do, I try to leave my office by about 4:30 and do the last couple hours of work remotely from home so I can be there for homework questions and I can be there.
I can't do the homework anymore.
Yeah.
You're better than I am.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm smart enough to do the homework. I'm just saying I like to be there when they're doing the homework. Man, their homework is freaking
grade.
hard.
I lost out
know.
at 7th grade. Yeah.
Like, I'm getting my money's worth at this school here.
All right, I'm going to do a quick lightning round, but before
Okay.
that, we're here in 10 years. We're still doing this event. It's still sold out. What does Goop look like then?
Wow. Gosh, you know, it's hard for me to answer the question because I feel like every day I have so much in front of me. I mean, I guess I would really just love to keep building the brand and scaling it and hopefully impacting people's lives in a great way and making incredible, clean, efficacious product that is, you know, valuable for women and the few men that, you know, appreciate our face scrub. You know, just sort of, also I'd love to figure out ways to create more community with our readers as well as we continue to grow the brand.
All right, quick lightning round.
Okay.
First thing that comes to your head. So first thing you read in the morning.
My emails, just to make sure there's no disaster that's happened overnight.
It's true. I always
And then
tried to
news
come up with a better
after.
answer,
I know.
but that's mine too.
That's the truth.
Favorite guilty pleasure?
Ooh, sun tanning?
I thought you were going to say bolognese. Favorite place you've ever traveled?
Oh my gosh. That's really difficult. Maybe Indonesia.
It's a great place. Favorite movie you've seen this year?
Oh my gosh. This documentary called The Biggest Little Farm. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but I highly, highly recommend it. If you want to see the most beautiful metaphor for the positive outcome of true diversity and the beauty and power of nature and like sob.
What's it called? The Biggest Little Farm?
The Biggest Little Farm.
Okay. Business you wish you were running if it wasn't Goop?
Ooh, gosh, maybe just something a lot more doable and small, like a restaurant or something.
And best piece of advice you ever got?
I think probably the best piece of advice I ever got that might be the most helpful to share was to really forgive myself and let go of all of the old misconceptions I had about who I was. And I think if we all could do that every day, when we start to hear like, oh, I did this, or I did this wrong, or I wish I hadn't made that mistake, or, you know, I've transgressed in some way, just to be like, you know what? I forgive myself.
That's an ongoing thing, though.
Yeah.
Great. Anyway, let's give it up big for Gwyneth
Thank you for
Paltrow.
having me.
So good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That was great.
Thanks.
I was ready to cry.
My